Well, I'm with you tonight as an answer to the Republican primary debate. I was disappointed to not be able to participate in that, not because I'm a Republican, but because people's decision making in the primary is more complicated than just should I vote for one of the two leading Republican candidates. There are many things facing our state, and I always believe that a diversity of ideas gives us a better outcome. I'm a Democrat, nonpartisan leaguer. I have great faith in our state and our people. At this point in time, I have more faith in our people than in our state. This has been an interesting campaign so far. I know what people say is how happy they are that I am running and how I just do not sound like a politician. And I appreciate both of those statements. Getting on to the questions of tonight's debate. The first question was, how do you think North Dakotans are interpreting your campaign? And of course, there's a myriad of interpretations out there. Many Republicans are just trying to go right past me and say that the election is June 14th, and they're taking people for granted that they will continue to support whomever the Republicans put up. But as I said already, I am not a politician, and that is one of the things that people really find attractive in a time like this. Because we've had a problem in our state and in our country that the politics do not favor families, do not favor women, do not favor minorities. Indeed, they favor a chosen few, and that is one of the great problems in our government, in our state. I should also mention the one thing I do is, even for those who don't agree with me, is that I do listen, I do talk to them, and often I find things of value in their viewpoints. So feel free to contact me, even if you don't agree with me. What is my position on the proposed Fargo-Moorhead diversion and land acquisitions prior to a project that has yet to be approved? Well, that's a little bit of a problem at this point. I was somewhat surprised by the use of quick take eminent domain for a part of the project that was not going to be built until this fall. Quick take allows you to take and immediately build on it after depositing the money. And I didn't see any reason why, with several months before construction was to start, that they could not have continued to negotiate and hopefully reached a mutual satisfying decision. Now, I'm disappointed that they did that. And it's the way these projects work. The governor is not a dictator in this. The projects are locally driven, and then the state comes in to support the people in their projects. And there's usually a fight, and there's usually some people who aren't happy because they did not make their project the local one. But one thing that I would say is, to get my support, the project must, which it does not currently, meet state standards. And where I believe it's not meeting the state standards is in the mitigation. And at this point, they would potentially be flooding someone with 6 inches of water without compensating them. I am opposed to that. The state standard is 1/10 of a foot, not 1/2 of a foot. It's just not fair to say, give me flood protection, but okay, so I flooded you. It didn't really cost you anything. It costs everybody something to be flooded. And so we have to make those people who are in some ways losing the use of their property, giving it to the better overall benefit, they must be made whole. Now, there's basically so much money for the project in the state support, and we don't really know where things are going to go, but the project's not going to be built in one biennium or 1 year. It's going to take some time. And if, in order to make those people whole, it took some additional funding that has not been in the project before, I would support the state joining in additional support to make those people whole. I just believe that it's the right thing to do. I don't believe that it should be a deal breaker as far as the overall project goes. And of course we have many other flood projects across the state too. On to the next question. What's my plan for western North Dakota? How will you ensure that the state will be ready if or when oil prices come back up? Well, before we're ready for the next boom, we really need to be ready for what's coming very rapidly into western North Dakota right now, and that's budget cuts. The cities, the counties, as they're receiving less oil money, are cutting their budgets and cutting them substantially. This is a real problem from the standpoint of crime, because we are having a crime wave in this state. We're having shootings, we're having murders, we're having robberies, we're having burglaries, and law enforcement in the western part of the state is going to shrink this coming year because there's just literally no money for it. I supported an increase in people for the Attorney General's office to support statewide crime attacks this last session. I am not sure under the situation that what we did is large enough. Somehow we have to have a coordinated effort, and we have to get the gangs, and we have to get the drug pushers, and we have to get the armed robbers out of North Dakota. Now, it'd be just nice to say, western North Dakota, oh, we're just going to magically find you the money. And that's unfortunate. The way the system is set up, all this money gets squirreled away in various trust funds before the impact is funded. And with the oil cut in the taxes that took place, frankly, there's just not going to be money to cover the impact this coming biennium. It's just not going to be there. You're not going to get it without taking it away from someone else, and that's not going to happen. So it's unfortunate, but it's really already been decided. Western North Dakota is going to go through a very difficult time, at least in the short term. Now for the boom again, I don't think we're ever going to see a boom quite like we had, because people were perfecting leases, they were trying to drill everywhere, and now we have infield drilling. And one thing that moderates the whole industry now for price increases is all the duck wells, drilled but uncompleted. And they can be brought online very fast. We have about 900 or so in this state. If they start out, as Lynn Helm says, at 1,000 barrels a day, that would almost double our production just to bring them online. But it's not going to take all those drilling rigs. It's not going to take all those workers. It'll take some, but it's not going to be like it was before. But those put a cap on the market because they can rapidly come online. And they don't occur just here. They occur around the country. So first we have to worry about the downturn, and then we'll have to start planning for an upturn, but that'll be down the road. Let's see here. Do we support the Obama administration's recent guidelines on transgender bathroom use for the state of North Dakota in both the public and school settings? Now realize that this was nothing new. This was simply a clarification. And it was brought about by an unnecessary nationwide attack on the transgender people. And so it was a response to people who are attacking a small, vulnerable group out of hate. As such, I support the guidelines. I think that some people have attempted to intentionally misinterpret them, such as by saying a transgender person, that we can all just say what sex we are any day of the week. Well, that's not a transgender person. We have people who are predators now who go where they don't belong and do things they don't, and none of that is going to change under the guidelines. Sure, somebody will try to mount a defense that they're a transgender individual when they're nothing but a criminal. But we can deal with that. We don't need this. Would I support full benefits for families in the LGBTQ community and giving them the same rights as heterosexual couples? Well, it's kind of a strange question. This has already been decided. It's not decided by the governor of North Dakota. They do have the same rights. We're going to have to adjust our laws to make it so. Our laws are unconstitutional, and we'll have to adjust them. What's my position on incoming refugees to North Dakota, and how would you encourage North Dakotans to support that position? Well, we're talking refugees here. People fleeing for their lives. This is not immigration. This is not illegal immigration. This is people fleeing for their lives. You know, in World War II, we let the Jews, by and large, sit there in Europe. We didn't rescue them. We let them be taken by the Nazis to the internment camps. We let them die. That will forever be our shame. We should not, as a country, do that to any other people. I know that people are fearful of terrorism, but it's about the most inefficient way for a terrorist to ever get in the United States, to take the risks and to do what these people have done, and to sit in a camp for usually years in order to be allowed into our country. Be much more efficient ways to get here. Plus, the real danger is probably more homegrown terrorists, people who aren't made to feel welcome when they're here, people who are ostracized, people who are isolated, and then, through poverty, through isolation, they become a fertile breeding ground for terrorism. And it's not limited to any one race, any one religion, or any one peoples of any kind. All of us are susceptible to that. So if we want to fight terrorism, the thing that we need to do is we need to be a welcoming people who are willing to embrace those who are different than ourselves. That's the real solution. The teacher shortage in North Dakota. How would I attract people in education, especially in rural areas? Well, this is an ongoing problem because, again, just like we have the hate attacks against the transgender people, we have a constant hate attack by certain groups against our public schools. It used to be clear it was to get funding for private schools, get funding for charter schools, and then one day all those emails went away, except they kept coming, only now everyone says Common Core. There's an entire industry out there that's built around discrediting our public schools for the purpose of obtaining tax money for private schools. Don't be misled by it. For the teachers, we need respect. That is a primary thing. Then, of course, they need decent wages. Giving loans and loan forgiveness can be a part of the equation. Doing some innovative things to get them out to the rural areas. But the biggest thing missing in the rural areas is often the type of culture that college-educated people want to belong to. One of the things that the state of North Dakota does is it gets every state job it can away from the rural areas and puts them into the population centers. It's done because of political expediency, and it's done because that's the attitude, is that the rural area is dying, and so the state government actually helps that. And if I have a rural school in a rural town, and I want to have a vibrant community, one of the things that we have to do is we have to start finding places where we can use state workers. You hear it said all the time that you can be anywhere now and work. State workers, by and large, deal with data. Yet, our state seems completely incapable of putting somebody into a rural area and allowing them to work there. Many times the workers are already there and they're not going to come to Bismarck to work. And that really building the rural area up in general is what we can do to really get teachers into that area. What should the state's priorities be in balancing the billion-dollar budget deficit? Well, I would first of all point out that while there's a billion-dollar general fund deficit, our spending at this point, we're not going to have the $2 billion we spent out of the SIF fund last time either. So spending is going to really decrease a lot more than $1 billion. So it's a bigger problem than some want to admit. We have to, of course, give education a priority. And the way that the funds are set up right now, I don't think that's going to be a problem, that our K through 12 education is going to continue to be funded very similarly to what it is the coming biennium. And then we still have infrastructure needs. We're not going to just completely quit building roads. I'm not sure if there's actually going to be enough money to match the federal road funds without doing something, but I haven't really worked through that yet. But it's a possibility that we might not actually have enough money to fully use the federal funds. So, but we still have infrastructure. We still have bridges that are not in good shape. We still have a need to get natural gas to many of our communities and our reservations. We continue to need to build more high-speed data infrastructure. And we just have all those things that we need to continue. We can't just stop because it'll really put us in a death spiral. And then one thing that has to be a real priority is the crime wave that we're experiencing. We have so many cities now, due to what's happening to them, that are going to be forced at this time to seriously cut their police forces, seriously cut their spending on crime prevention. And here we are having shootings, murders, people dropping dead in the street from drugs. The state is just going to have to step up and increase our support for those things. We can't allow people to go through this. We can't allow the gangs that are here to control our state. This is a major priority that we really must focus on. We talk about prison reform, but let's admit it, until we get the mental health workers, Stenium's plan is literally you're going to have to elect him twice to even get to where the things start to change in the prison system. Well, right now, with the crime wave we're having, we're not going to empty out our prisons. We're not going to save any money there. It's just not going to happen because we don't have the mental health infrastructure in place. And it's going to take years for us to get the graduates that we need. What's your opinion on lawsuits like the Sioux nickname and the Red River Women's Clinic, which some deem frivolous with no chance of passing at the federal level, paid for by the taxpayers, while the state is dealing with budget cuts? Well, first of all, once Wayne Stenium went down to the NCAA and signed a contract with them on the Sioux name, everything after that was frivolous. It was all just a waste of time. Because he agreed in the name of the state of North Dakota to do certain things, and those things didn't happen, and therefore we had to live up to our contract. Poor contract. Really poor contract. Abortion. It's an issue that I've struggled with, but when we got just besieged by so many bills, I've come to realize the Supreme Court's not been silent on this issue. There is really no reason for these outside organizations to come in and hammer our state and use us as their guinea pig and use us to fund their fight. What we need to do is just back away from it. We need to get involved in the whole life issues like daycare, equal pay, and those things that actually will save lives, will actually make families' lives better in this state. And we need to quit wasting our time and our effort. We talk a lot about the money. But perhaps more important is the time. When you see all these lawsuits, there's only so much time for the people working in the Attorney General's office. And it gets back to that crime wave. If they're spending their time on these lawsuits, they're not spending their time going after criminal activity. We need to have the Attorney General focused on crime in this state. Oh yes, the Republicans get to explain their support for Donald Trump. I won't be unfair and tell what I think of Donald Trump. As many know, I've been supportive of Bernie Sanders. I believe that Bernie Sanders gets right to the heart of what's seriously threatening this country. And that is the wealth going to a very few people, and in many cases those very few people even taking the wealth out of this country, avoiding even paying taxes on it. And we have a struggling and shrinking middle class, an increasing lower class. We have a lack of upward mobility. All those things are what really threaten this country. Now, I disagree with Bernie on that we should ban fracking, that we should be rid of coal. We cannot do that in this state. There is nothing in western North Dakota that can replace that. And so as a scientist, I say, let us turn to science. We have sequestration. It's getting close. It's not there economically just yet. But the state of North Dakota, when we're really doing our priorities, we need to be ready to make a more significant partnership with the coal industry. We need to quit wasting time on this. I would think this coming biennium we should be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $100 million. And we might have one or two bienniums at that level, and then that will probably go up for a time. But we cannot close the plants. We cannot shut off the oil wells. We have to find a way through science to make this ecologically acceptable. When you leave the governor's office at the end of your term, what will have changed, and what will be better, and what will be in our pain points? Well, change seems to be coming faster all the time, so I would guess pretty much everything's changed, except the older generation will probably think the younger generation's just no good. That seems to be the one constant in life. And I've never really found it to be true. Hopefully, we will be making some serious headway on the mental health issues in our state that cause us so many ills. And then we have thousands and thousands of destroyed acres from oil development in this state. We need to start cleaning up those toxic waste dumps. It's one of the saddest things that the people entrusted in protecting this state have not done so. We knew in the 1940s what the effects of waste pits would be, and they let the oil industry do it anyway. To this day, they continue to let the old tanks put the gas and put the sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere to cause more severe global warming and to make the people in those areas breathe it. And it causes a lot of respiratory ills for those people. I would hope that we do a better job planning in this state. I would hope that the state would many times have people who are ready to provide the resources to help the local jurisdictions plan as well. When this boom came in western North Dakota, those towns were just on their own, and that caused a lot of problems. There was a lot of great local people who stepped up and did amazing jobs, but the state should have been ready to help. Higher ed, I think, just the way I see it, I still think we're going to have a lot of pain in higher ed. There's just people with such different visions of the whole thing going. One thing that I really would hope as a state that we see better is our information technology on the state level. We're spending huge amounts on that, and often we can't even get data from one department to the other. It makes no sense, and I'd really like to see a much more integrated, much more efficient system. And I think in many ways we with the computing power today, be able to get away from the proprietary mainframe type computers into more efficient stuff. And I'm hoping that we can really see some of those efficiencies in government and seize them. And then the other thing that's just most critical. I've made a big issue this campaign about WSI, the way they treat our workers like criminals, the way they treat volunteer firemen and ambulance workers like criminals, like they treat an injured worker like the injured worker is the problem and an opponent and someone to be fought against. That will change. It's completely unacceptable. And I wish that I could say that it was only WSI that has that attitude. But as I've sat in the legislature and listened to people, there have been more than one disabled person who's experienced that same thing in other places in state government. We must, as a government, start to take care of the most vulnerable. Closing remarks. I hope that in this election you will consider something other than just doing the same old. I would think now that the problems that we're having on the state level would have revealed just what was going on. That things like the audit of the state land departments showing that we gave money to people that weren't even eligible. That we've been putting money in the wrong accounts for years. That we have this culture of who cares? Nobody's gonna make us accountable. We have agencies that are investing billions of dollars in our name. I've not been able to get them audited. We have agencies responsible for the environmental quality of western North Dakota and, for that matter, eastern North Dakota, and responsible for billions of dollars, and I've not been able to get them audited. I would hope that you, at the very least, would support the idea that we should, on occasion, take a critical look at what we're doing in government. That you would support performance audits, not financial audits, not audits of how the agency is complying with the law, though those are certainly valuable, but actual performance audits. How are we functioning? Are we doing things right? Are we doing things efficiently? If you look at all the budgets for the state agencies, the auditor has just this tiny little budget because we don't spend very much on making sure that we're doing the job right. I would hope that you would support changing that. People say I don't sound much like a politician, and I guess that's because I never learned to be one. I've been in the State House for 3 sessions now. I've listened and I've learned, and I see a lot of problems. And I would ask that you would join in trying to make North Dakota a North Dakota for all North Dakotans, a friendly place, a place where we can grow and thrive and live together. The future is in your hands. Join with me. Thank you.